There was a man in my slippers. My slippers. Not similar ones. Mine. I bought them at a discount pharmacy in Portland during a snowstorm. One of the soles had a burn mark from when I dropped a match lighting a candle last winter. Coralie hated them. She called them grandpa shoes. And yet, here he was, size 10, left foot slightly dragging the way I do, padding around our kitchen like he'd always belonged there. I didn't slam the door. I didn't say a word. I just stood in the foyer holding a bag of groceries I no longer remembered buying. He looked up, smiled. Not like a guilty man. Not like someone caught. More like someone offering a warm welcome to me, in my house, as if I were the intruder. "Oh, hey," he said. "You must be Russell." I didn't respond. Not because I was speechless. Because my teeth were vibrating. Behind him, Coralie appeared. She wasn't in a panic. She didn't rush over to explain. She had her arms folded, a mug in her hand, and a look I'd never seen before. Pity? No. Confidence? Not quite. It was more like annoyance. Like I'd shown up too early to my own execution. I didn't drop the groceries. I just walked into the living room, sat down, and turned on the TV. It was still on Channel 7 from the night before, some local morning show rerun about dog yoga. The man followed me. He sat down on the opposite couch, in my Spider-Man pajama pants. I haven't worn those in years. I thought they were in the attic. But now they were hugging this man's thighs like we shared a body. Coralie said we should talk, he said casually. Man to man. I turned off the TV. My fingers were twitching. That's when I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the folded cafe napkin I'd written on an hour earlier, and tossed it to her without a word. "Don't come home." She read it. Didn't flinch. But he did. He leaned forward and whispered, like we were conspirators. "She already told me you'd try something dramatic." I stood up. Not fast. Very slow. Mechanical. Like I was moving underwater. And I said the only thing I could think of in that moment. "Where are my pants?" Coralie blinked. The man laughed. And that's how this part ends. I didn't leave right away. I should have. That would have been the healthy, adult, emotionally intelligent thing to do. But instead, I wandered into the kitchen like I was looking for answers in the cabinet drawers. The man, still nameless, still smug, followed me like we were roommates. Coralie trailed behind, not saying a word. Sipping from her mug like this was a casual Sunday morning and not the public implosion of my reality. That's when I opened the freezer. And I saw it. A gallon-sized Ziploc bag stuffed full of torn photographs. Not digital prints. Real, tangible, glossy photos. Our wedding. Our dog's birthday party. The trip to Colorado where Coralie cried watching the sunrise. Ripped down the middle. Stuffed like meat into plastic. Frost crusting the edges of our faces. One of them still had my mother's handwriting on the back. "Love you both always." "What the hell is this?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Coralie didn't even look up. "You left them on the dresser for weeks. I thought you were going to throw them out." "In the freezer?" It felt poetic, she said, still calm, like that made perfect sense. I turned to the guy. He was leaning against the counter, chewing on a piece of gum he definitely didn't have before. "She's into symbolism," he said, winking. I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Not rage. Not yet. Just this uncomfortable, itchy kind of burn, like I was wearing clothes that didn't fit anymore. I looked around the kitchen, our kitchen, and started noticing little things I hadn't before. A second toothbrush on the sink. His phone charger plugged in behind the couch. A set of male vitamins in the cupboard next to mine. He wasn't visiting. He was living here. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Coralie finally looked at me. Her expression softened for a moment, not with guilt, but with exhaustion. Like she was tired of pretending I hadn't already figured it out. 2.5 months, she said. "It started before your birthday." Before my birthday. We had dinner that night. She made my favorite meal. I remember her crying during dessert and saying she was just overwhelmed with love. Turns out she was overwhelmed. All right. Probably from the mental gymnastics of eating cake with me while hiding a man in my slippers 2 zip codes away. I laughed. Not a real laugh. One of those desperate, cracked, unhinged laughs that feels like it belongs to someone else. "You were going to let me come home," I said. "After I saw you at the cafe, after the note, you still would have let me come home. And just coexist with this?" Coralie put her mug down, slowly. "No, I wasn't. I was going to call you tonight. I didn't think you'd actually come back." "Right? Because I'm not dramatic, remember?" The guy stepped forward then. For the first time, he wasn't smiling. Look, man, I know this is rough, but the sooner you accept it, the better for everyone. I turned to him slowly. I don't even know your name. It's Carter, he said. Of course it is. And then, without even thinking, I opened the fridge, grabbed the nearest thing, a bottle of oat milk, and threw it directly at his chest. It exploded in a spectacular splash. He jumped back like I'd thrown acid. Coralie screamed, "Are you serious?" I didn't answer. I was already halfway up the stairs. Because that's when I realized something even worse than the man, the freezer bag, or the slippers. Half of my clothes were missing. The bedroom door creaked like it hadn't been opened in weeks. Which was weird, considering I'd slept in that bed 4 nights ago. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something had shifted. Not just the air, but the geometry of the room. My shoes were missing from the rack. A few hoodies had vanished. Even the mattress looked different, like it had been rotated or replaced. There was a faint scent I couldn't place at first. Musky. Sharp. Not cologne, not deodorant. It was the smell of a stranger making himself at home. I yanked open the closet. Half empty. Gone were my flannel shirts. The ones Coralie hated, but I wore anyway. The navy jacket with the coffee stain she said made me look like a college professor in a crisis. My socks, all the normal ones, were missing, replaced with a neat row of pastel-colored ankle pairs that looked freshly bought. On the top shelf, buried behind one of her yoga mats, I found a box. My box. The one I'd kept hidden under the bed for years. Inside it were the last things I thought she'd touch. My dad's old watch, a bundle of handwritten letters from before we got married, and a tiny metal pin I won in 7th grade for a science fair project. Useless things. My things. She had gone through them and neatly put them away like artifacts in a museum. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the open closet, trying to remember when the world started rearranging itself without telling me. Did I sleep through this? Did I want to? That's when I noticed the calendar on the wall. Coralie always kept a dry erase calendar next to her vanity. She used to color-code it like a maniac, purple for work, green for me time, orange for couple stuff, which had been suspiciously absent for months. But now it was different. It wasn't color-coded. It wasn't even written in her handwriting. It was his. I recognized the style from a single post-it he'd written earlier that morning. Something about replacing the water filter and don't forget the eggs. On the calendar, some days were marked with hearts, others with symbols. Most were just blank. Except one. Yesterday. A large, black, X-shaped slash cut across the date like a warning sign. No label. No context. I stood there staring at it, heart pounding harder with each second. What happened yesterday? What did the X mean? Why mark it that way? That's when I heard a sound behind me. A soft thunk, like something dropping onto carpet. I turned. Carter was standing in the hallway, holding a laundry basket full of towels. He was shirtless now. A tribal tattoo I hadn't noticed before wrapped around his collarbone like a noose made of ink. "You shouldn't be up here," he said. Not angry. Just firm. Like a substitute teacher reminding me I didn't belong. I didn't move. I stared at him like he was a puzzle I couldn't solve. "Why are my clothes gone?" He shrugged. "She donated them. Said you probably wouldn't want to be reminded." Reminded of what? He didn't answer. Instead, he tilted his head, as if trying to figure out how much I could take before shattering. "Did you mark that X on the calendar?" A pause. A slow smile. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe not." Then he walked back down the hall. And I just stood there, surrounded by a room full of not mine, trying to remember what yesterday even was. I checked my phone, scrolled through my call log, my texts, my photos. Nothing. No messages from Coralie. No appointments. No emails. Just one draft in my notes app, auto-saved at 2:13 a.m. the night before. If I disappear, start with the freezer. I didn't leave the bedroom for another 30 minutes. I just sat there, hunched on the edge of the bed, staring at the closet like it might reassemble itself if I blinked enough times. There was a sharp ringing in my ears, a low, constant whine that felt like pressure building in the walls of the house itself. I kept thinking about that note on my phone. I must have written it while half asleep. That's the only explanation. Except, I couldn't remember going to bed the night before. I couldn't remember anything after 10:40 p.m. And then my phone lit up. One missed call. No caller ID. A voicemail. I played it on speaker without thinking. The voice was garbled. Low. Hoarse. like it was recorded in a basement or through a pillow. But it was me, my voice, saying something over and over, almost chanting. They moved it. They moved it. They moved it. Then silence. A long breath. And finally, don't look in the shed. The voicemail ended. I stared at the screen, heart hammering. I replayed it twice, then a third time. The tone was unmistakably mine, but twisted, cracked open, trembling, like I'd seen something I couldn't process. And yet, I had no memory of ever saying those words. No memory of calling myself. My phone history didn't even show the call, just the voicemail. I finally stood up and walked slowly down the stairs. The house was quiet. No footsteps, no sounds of laundry tumbling, no clink of mugs in the kitchen. I thought Carter and Corley had left. But when I turned the corner, she was sitting on the living room floor, cross-legged, organizing what looked like old paperwork. She didn't look up. I didn't speak. I just watched her in silence until she finally noticed me. "You look pale," she said flatly. "Like you've seen a ghost." I didn't respond. I just asked, "Do you know anything about a shed?" Her hand froze mid-stack. She blinked once. Slowly, like that word, shed, had just pierced something she was trying hard to keep buried. "We don't have a shed," she said after a pause. "Right," I said. "So why did I get a voicemail saying not to look in it?" Now she looked up. Her eyes were cold. Not angry, not scared, just done. Like she'd run out of energy to keep lying. "You're not well, Russell." I laughed. Sharp. Dry. "Oh, I'm not well," says the woman who packed my memories in a freezer bag and moved a stranger into my wardrobe. Corley stood, still calm, still weirdly composed. "Do you remember what happened 3 nights ago?" I opened my mouth to speak. Nothing came out. 3 nights ago? I couldn't even tell you what I'd had for breakfast that day. It was just fog. The last thing I remembered clearly was watching a late-night documentary about ancient bridges. After that, nothing. "You had an episode," she said carefully. "You don't remember, because your mind protects you when it happens. That's why I called Carter." I blinked. "What do you mean, an episode?" "You were screaming in your sleep. You broke the mirror in the hallway. You kept saying something about switching places. I didn't know what to do. Carter helped me clean it up. We didn't call anyone because you begged us not to. You said you didn't want anyone institutionalizing you again." I felt the floor tilt. "What do you mean again?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached under the couch and pulled out a plain white envelope. My name was written on the front in my own handwriting. The shaky, all-caps block letters I only use when I'm trying to stay in control. I opened it. Inside was a Polaroid. Blurry, poorly lit. Taken at night. It was me, standing in front of a shed I didn't recognize, holding a shovel, covered in mud. I dropped the photo. Corley leaned closer and whispered, "There is no shed." Then she walked out of the room, and the house started to feel like it wasn't mine anymore. The Polaroid burned in my hands for the rest of the night. Not literally, of course, but the weight of it felt unbearable. I carried it around the house like it was radioactive, flipping it over, looking for some note or timestamp, something to confirm it was doctored, staged, fake. But it wasn't. That was undeniably me. Tired, sunken-eyed, standing beside a weathered wooden shed with chipped white paint, holding a shovel like I was in the middle of digging a grave. But there was no shed. Not in our yard. Not anywhere nearby. At least, not that I remembered. I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch until the morning light crept through the blinds like a silent accusation. Carter's voice carried down the stairs at one point. Low, controlled, too calm for someone who'd just been pelted with oat milk the day before. Corley didn't say much, but I could tell she wasn't whispering anymore. They weren't hiding anything. They didn't need to. I was the one unraveling, not them. Not in their eyes. By 9 a.m., I made up my mind. I needed to know if the shed was real. I didn't care how insane it made me look. I had the photo. I had the voicemail. I had the hole in my memory. Whether it was trauma, a mental break, or something worse, it didn't matter. I needed answers, and no one in this house was going to give them to me. So I waited. I watched from the kitchen window as Carter backed out of the driveway in my car. My car, like he'd been driving it for years. Corley was in the passenger seat, arms crossed, expression blank. They didn't even glance at the house. That was the part that really got me, like I was already gone. As soon as they disappeared around the corner, I ran upstairs and pulled open every drawer, every closet, every dusty box in the attic. Nothing. No notes, no maps, no clue about the location of that shed. until I remembered something. A few years ago, Coralie's dad gave us a stack of old property documents after a fight with the city about our boundary line. I found them buried under a pile of board games in the hall closet. Most of it was useless, but one faded sketch caught my attention. It was a hand-drawn lot plan, dated 1994. Behind the house, where the garden was now, there was a small rectangle marked Outbuilding Original. No further description. No measurements. Just a faint shape in a yard that no longer matched what I saw out the window. I grabbed my boots and a jacket, stumbled out the back door, and began stomping through the soft morning soil. It had rained the night before, and the ground squished beneath my heels. I started near the tool shed, the real one, and worked my way outward in a spiral, checking every patch of grass for unevenness, discoloration, anything. Half an hour in, I was soaked, freezing, and about to give up when I stepped on something that felt hollow. A soft echo beneath my boot. I dropped to my knees and clawed at the earth like a madman. My fingers went raw. My nail split. But after 20 minutes of frantic digging, I uncovered a thin layer of plywood painted over in dirt and moss. Beneath it, a trapdoor, sealed with a rusted ring handle. My pulse exploded in my ears. This wasn't the shed from the Polaroid. It was under the shed. Buried. Hidden. And someone had gone through a lot of effort to make sure it stayed that way. With shaking hands, I pried the trapdoor open. It groaned like a wounded animal. Cold air blasted out from the darkness below, sharp, metallic, heavy. I grabbed the flashlight from the porch and pointed it down into the void. Steps. Wooden, narrow, descending into blackness. And something else. A sound. Not a voice. Not an animal. Not wind. It was breathing. Rhythmic. Shallow. Alive. Coming from somewhere deep inside. I should have run. I should have slammed the trapdoor and called someone, anyone. But I didn't. Because for the first time in days, I didn't feel crazy. I felt close. Close to the truth. Close to something that might explain the voicemail, the calendar, the photo, even the man in my slippers. So I stepped down into the dark. And the door slammed shut above me. The door slammed with such violence that the trapdoor's wooden frame rattled above me, sending a sprinkle of dirt and flakes of dried paint down the steps. I spun around in the blackness, flashlight trembling in my grip, but the way back was already gone. I jumped up the first 2 steps, slammed my shoulder into the trapdoor, tried to wedge my fingers under the edges, but it didn't budge. There was no latch, no lock, just weight, or something heavier than me, holding it shut from the other side. I pounded until my knuckles hurt. Screamed her name, Coralie, like I believed she was up there watching, smiling, maybe filming it for a TikTok or something. But there was only silence. And the breathing. I turned back toward the stairs. They went down farther than I'd realized. The first dozen steps were worn but sturdy, and below them, the air grew thicker, muggy, stale, laced with mildew and something sweet. Almost syrupy. The scent was strangely familiar, but I couldn't place it. Like rotting fruit that you don't notice until it's already soaked into the walls. I took the rest of the steps slowly, one by one, each groaning like a warning. The flashlight flickered twice, cheap batteries, of course, and for a heartbeat, everything went black. When the beam returned, I found myself in a narrow hallway. Stone walls, dirt floor, no decorations, no shelves, just a crude tunnel running straight ahead, maybe 20 feet long, ending in a door that looked like it had been dragged straight from a horror movie set. It was metal, but ancient, covered in scratches and rusted streaks that looked like dried blood. No knob, just a handle. The breathing was louder now. Still faint, still distant, but definitely coming from behind that door. I stepped forward. Slowly. The tunnel felt too narrow. My shoulders brushed the walls. I kept expecting to feel something reach out from behind and grip my neck. My shadow jittered against the dirt like it was trying to escape. When I reached the door, I hesitated. What the hell was I doing? If I opened this, what was I expecting to find? A metaphor? A joke? A homeless person Carter had been hiding for months? Was this some elaborate mental health intervention they had staged for me, complete with props and fake voicemail audio? I wanted to believe that. God, I needed to believe that. But something deeper told me the truth wasn't nearly that kind. I grabbed the handle. Cold. Greasy. I pulled. The door groaned open just enough for me to squeeze through. The room beyond was small, barely the size of a walk-in closet. The walls were lined with soundproofing foam, half falling off. There was a single folding chair in the middle, and someone sitting in it. My flashlight flickered again, and that's when I saw it. The man in the chair was me. Or at least, it looked like me. Pale, sunken cheeks, hands bound behind the chair, head slumped forward, wearing the exact same flannel shirt I'd thrown away 3 years ago after spilling battery acid on the cuff. I froze. I lifted his head slowly. His eyes fluttered open, and I swear to God, I saw relief in them. He opened his mouth, tried to speak, but all that came out was a raspy whisper. "I'm the real one." I stumbled backward, heart crashing against my ribs. The man, the double, struggled against the ropes. His voice cracked again. "You're not Russell. They took me. They put you in me. Switch, switch." His eyes rolled back, and from behind me, a new sound echoed. The unmistakable click of a camera shutter. I turned too fast and dropped the flashlight. Its beam spun, dizzying across the stone walls. In the dark, I heard Carter's voice. But it wasn't coming from the tunnel. It was coming from inside my head. I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, to run, to hurl myself against the walls until they broke, or I did. But my legs refused. My hands were trembling so badly they barely felt attached. The only thing grounding me in that moment was the shallow, wheezing breath of the man. No, the version of me, strapped to the chair in the middle of the room. His words echoed in my skull like they were carved into bone. "I'm the real one." And then came Carter's voice again. Not out loud, not from the hallway, not from the surface above. It slid in through the cracks in my thoughts like oil leaking into water. "Do you understand now?" he asked. Calm, gentle, like a parent explaining bedtime to a child. "You weren't supposed to dig. You were meant to forget." I spun around, sweeping the flashlight across the walls. Nothing. No door. No hidden speaker. Just foam padding, stone, and silence. But the voice pressed deeper. "You were always so curious, Russell. That was the problem. The itch behind your teeth, the noise you couldn't tune out. You poked at things. You asked. You remembered. But you were never supposed to." I stumbled back toward the man in the chair. I wanted to touch him, to check his pulse, to prove to myself this was a mask, a trick, some kind of elaborate hallucination brought on by sleep deprivation and heartbreak. But the closer I got, the more I saw it, the tiny details that didn't just resemble me. They were me. The tiny scar on the left eyebrow from falling off my bike in 2nd grade. The mole on the shoulder blade. Even the chipped tooth, fixed with a cap in college. Too real. Too precise. This wasn't a copy. This was me, undone. His eyes fluttered again, and he spoke, barely louder than a breath. "They did something. She let them. Carter's not what you think he is. He's programmed. They made him for her. He replaces." My stomach turned cold. "Replaces what?" "Me," he whispered. "You." The flashlight flickered again, and for a moment, the entire room dipped into pure black. When the beam returned, the man in the chair was no longer looking at me. He was looking past me, his eyes wide with terror. I turned, and Carter was standing in the doorway, fully real, fully present, holding something in his hands. A bag, a gray, padded medical duffel. He smiled. "There's no use panicking, Russ," he said, walking forward slowly. "You're going to forget all this soon. You always do." "What the hell are you talking about?" I said, my voice cracking, fury trying to force its way through the fear. "What I asked this place? What is he?" Carter knelt beside the man in the chair. He opened the duffel and pulled out a syringe, long, silver, professional. He checked it like a man watering a plant. Then he turned to me. "He's the original," he said casually. "Or maybe you are. Depends on the week. We've had to recalibrate a few times." "I'm not." "What the hell does that mean?" "You came home too soon. That's the issue. Usually, you wander off longer. Let the brakes settle. But this time, you started noticing too early. The socks, right? It's always something stupid. Last time it was the mail. Before that, a broken drawer." "You're lying," I said, backing up. "You're trying to break me." He looked up, thoughtful. "No," Carter said. "That already happened. We're just managing it." He moved fast. Too fast. In a blink, the syringe was pressed against my neck. I grabbed his arm, kicked, yelled, shoved, but his grip didn't loosen. His expression never changed. He didn't sweat. He didn't blink. He just watched me fade like a candle burning out in reverse. And the last thing I heard before the world went sideways was Corley's voice, faint and distant, whispering through some hidden speaker. "Don't worry, baby. We'll reset you again. This time, you won't remember the shed." And then everything went black. I woke up in my bed. The sun was warm on my face. My head ached like I'd been punched behind the eyes. Everything felt slightly off, like the room was angled wrong by a single degree. My hands trembled as I reached for the phone on the nightstand. 7:42 a.m. No notifications. No messages. No missed calls. I sat up, expecting to feel panic, confusion, or dread. But what I felt instead was stillness. A kind of heavy quiet inside me, like the chaos had passed through and moved on. I blinked slowly, testing my memory. And that's when I realized something strange. I remembered everything. The shed, the man in my slippers, the Polaroid, the Carter in my head, the original me strapped to a chair in the basement of a house that apparently no longer existed. All of it. And yet, the world around me was completely normal. Clean. Unbroken. The hallway mirror was intact. The kitchen smelled like toast. There was no sign of dirt on the floor, no photos in the freezer, no trapdoor in the yard. Just sunlight. And silence. Corley was sitting on the porch when I stepped outside. She looked up, startled, but only for a second. Then her face slipped into something calm, casual, prepared. Like she'd been rehearsing this conversation for days. "You're up," she said. "I remember." I replied, my voice clearer than I expected. "You tried to reset me." She flinched, but then she gave a small nod. "Honest. Tired. It never works for long," she admitted. "But you always seem happier afterward. You said that last time, didn't you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stood and walked over, gently brushing something off my shoulder, some imaginary speck, something to make the moment feel more human. But it wasn't. I saw her eyes dart toward the backyard for just a second, like she was still scared I'd go digging again. "You made Carter, didn't you?" I asked. She nodded again, this time more slowly. "After the breakdown. After the real first time. You were gone, Russell. I didn't know how to bring you back. They offered a solution. Not a cure, just a system. And you chose him over me." "No," she said quietly. "I chose survival. We both did." For a moment, the breeze carried the sound of a car passing. I looked at her face, not angry anymore, not manipulative, just sad. Maybe sad for me. Maybe sad for what we'd become. Or maybe just tired of lying. But here's the thing. I didn't feel broken anymore. Something about remembering, finally remembering, had stitched something back together inside me. For the first time in months, maybe years, my thoughts were my own. The fog was gone. The loops had ended. They had reset me. But the reset didn't work. "Where's Carter?" I asked. "Gone. For now," she said. "They shut him down when your memory spike triggered a conflict. He's been archived. They might send a replacement." "They won't," I said. And I believed it. Because I knew exactly what I needed to do. Later that day, I packed a single duffel bag. No long letters. No revenge. No dramatic speeches. Just a quiet exit. I left Coralie sitting on the porch, staring at the driveway as I pulled out, her face unreadable. Maybe she thought I'd be back again. Maybe she knew this time was different. I drove until the city disappeared behind me. Until the radio static was the only sound. Until I found a quiet highway and turned off onto a road with no signs. And then I kept driving. Free. Clear. My memory's mine again. And somewhere, deep in the part of my mind no one could tamper with, a thought bloomed like light through stained glass. They will never reset me again.